Welcome to Lesson 5, Here and Now. The ability to be truly present is something that is getting lost in our current, everything right now society. Get it now, I want it right now, 2-day shipping, absolutely. But I want to ask you a question. When was the last time that you truly felt that you were in the moment? Really in the moment. Most of the time, we're ruminating on something that happened in the past, reliving something in our head over and over again. Or oftentimes we're ruminating about something that's maybe going to happen, something that is in the future. And we're hardly ever present in the moment. And when we're ruminating about something in the past or in the future, our brain is just spinning around and imagining dangers or, what ifs and, what could have beens. And the thing is, this only perpetuates stress. The thing is, you can't control the world, and thinking that you can only makes you suffer. This technique of here and now puts that control back within you. So lesson 5, here and now, what is it? It is a way to focus the mind and the body into a safe place of presence, to develop that presence in the here and now. So we're going to do a quick practice during this lesson, and then I'll go into why does this work. And why it does, just quickly to review, is that it uses phrases in the mind to maintain a focus while incorporating breath and a sense of touch and rhythm. So it brings in multiple layers to keep that focus going in the present moment. And then I'll go into some of the daily use ways that you can apply this and bring that practice into every moment and how to use it in stressful situations. Realize deeply that the present moment is all you will ever have. Eckhart Tolle. Eckhart Tolle he's an author in a number of books on enlightenment. He's a spiritual teacher of just general spirituality. And he was someone who suffered a very intense depression, but then he went on to experience this inner transformation where he now reports feeling a sense of calm and peace at all times. And he writes books to help other people see how he did it. Okay, so what is here and now? It's a little abbreviation of phrase, but then the technique goes into breathing along with it, and then the sense of protective touch, which I'll get into. This is Thich Nhat Hanh, and he is the one who came up with the phrases that I have found very, very helpful. What he says how to use this practice is breathing in, repeat, in the here, and then breathing out, repeat in the now, in the now. He says that although these are different words, they mean exactly the same thing. I have arrived in the here. I have arrived in the now. I am home in the here. I am home in the now. When you practice like that, you practice stopping. Stopping is the basic Buddhist practice of meditation. You stop running. You stop struggling. You allow yourself to rest, to heal, to calm. And Thich Nhat Hanh, if you find that these words of wisdom resonate with you, he's written a number of books, and he's a very insightful person who worked with Martin Luther King Jr. back in the day as well. So what is it? The technique that I describe in this course is in addition to the phrases that Thich Nhat Hanh mentioned. What you do is you wrap one or both your arms around your shoulder. So kind of in the photo here, we can go up or down, up and down with just one hand or both, depending on how things go. Whichever is more protective feeling for you in those moments where you need it. And what you do is as you breathe in, you move your hand from your elbow to your shoulder, and then you move them back down as you breathe out. And remember, you're saying the in the here, in the here, in the now, in the now. And what you're doing is you are noticing the breathing, the expansion of the chest. You're feeling your arm kind of like protectively on your shoulder and on your elbow, kind of reaching on that what we call bilateral stimulation. You're doing that bilateral on both sides stimulation. You're having that sense like it's almost like someone's giving you a hug, but it's yourself supplying this to yourself. So what I want to do now is just do a quick 1-minute practice with you. And you can use one arm, you can use two arms, just depends on how you want to do it. I personally prefer the one arm just because that's a bit easier and I can focus just on one felt sense. The bilateral too, the both sides is actually helpful for when you have more of that sense of needing that protection feeling. But right now we're just going to do 1 minute of practice. Okay, ready? Remember, you're going to say in the here, in the here, in the now, in the now. Breathing in, breathing out. Okay, ready? I'm going to go. So, in the here, in the here, in the now, in the now. In the here, in the here, in the now, in the now. In the here, in the here, in the now, in the now. In the here, in the here, in the now, in the now. And try to use as much of that felt touch as you can with an open hand, not just the fingertips, but as much as you can, that whole hand, to get more of that sensation on the outside of your arm and really get that full sensation to that palm of your hand. That's it. That's the 1 minute. I don't know about you, but that right there, just that touch and that breathing is just immediately calming. And the technique is so simple. And as Thich Nhat Hanh says, you can do it just sitting in the classic Buddhist meditation. However, adding in that touch to the self, this is a really important part of it. And I'll get into it in a second why. So again, why does it work? This is a thought process that's associated with some larger body movements as compared to the last lesson with some smaller fine body movements. What this does is it brings that internal locus of control and that feeling that you are in control back into the self. It's not that like the world outside is in control. You are in control. You're in the here, you're in the here, and you can even ground yourself in that sensation of the hand to the arm. And what this does is when you cross your arms like this, is it invokes a protective stance. A lot of people, they'll cross their arms when they're getting really defensive. And that being defensive can be a good or bad thing depending on the situation. And sometimes some stress can get very overwhelming, especially now that we're nearing the end of the orange zone where you're exceeding your abilities to cope with this. And what this does is that you are able to do this kind of crossed arms defensive position. And it's something that you can do even if, say, you are prone to hyperventilation and you notice tingling happens when you get really stressed and maybe your hands start to cramp. This is a technique that you could, because I've had people tell me that they try to do those fine motor movements, but when they start to hyperventilate, they can't do it. And then that in and of itself starts to freak them out that they can't do their coping mechanism any longer. So the perpetuation of the stress attack kind of continues. So what this does is it's another way to layer in those thought, body, and phrase things so that it's all in one technique. And then the other thing this does is it invokes beneception, which is the opposite of nociception, or the sensation of harm. So beneception, as in benefits or benefactor, is something that is a good thing. Inception means the ability to feel. And the beneception concept comes from this more of a theorized archetype from the Greek mythology. But what beneception is that, like I said, that felt sense of good and that felt sense of reward. Like, someone pats you on the shoulder, says, good job. You're doing this to yourself, to your body. And it's that felt sense of reward, or something that contributed really to the survival of our species by someone patting you on the back or even giving you a hug on both sides, but you can do this to yourself. The body reacts to that same stimulation. And that social engagement you can kind of do on your own by doing this kind of felt sense protective stance. So again, why does this work? I thought this was a really interesting study that shows the benefits of behavioral changes associated with specific types of training like this that are similar to this technique. So this was titled Short-Term Meditation Training Improves Attention and Self-Regulation. What this study did is they took a group of randomly assigned students and they did 5 days of 20 minutes a day training on an integrated mind and body meditation. And that's what this really is, because you're integrating the mind with the phrases and the body, and then you're sitting there doing it for a period of time. What this did was it showed improved scores in anxiety, depression, anger, fatigue, higher vigor is what the students reported, and a decrease in that stress hormone cortisol. The key thing that we're looking at here in this study is the attention and self-regulation. And these are two key components to decreasing stress and quickly transforming your relationship to stress in the mind in just 5 days. And this study, what it did is it showed a very strong behavioral change in just a few days with this training. Pretty similar to that focused attention like I talked about in thumb squeeze in that last lesson, but just on a larger scale with more body movements. And this study I think is absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. It's so cool. What it goes into is that there's a fact that about 80% of patients presenting to general practice doctors often show a lack of resiliency, and they do have a measurable level of psychological stress. 90% of people suffering from stress seek medical attention, and these visits can take up to as much as 70% of physicians' caseloads, and that's just because of stress and lack of resiliency. Stress is a seriously burdensome state, and that leads people to feel scared and unable to cope, and it shows up in the emergency room. But by training in these skills, people are able to better develop that resilience and can better identify what stress and fear is doing to them while cultivating a better wellness as a whole. So what they found in this study is that people who use these techniques, and this was a study done at Harvard, so they were able to use this on that population of people. They were trained in mind-body interventions, and they found that those people trained in this compared to a control group decreased their visits to the emergency room. The only intervention here was mind-body training. It develops that resilience, and that is key to developing that transformation with your relationship with stress. This is a lot of words for what you may have heard as the power poses study. This is the concept done by Amy Cuddy that when you hold more expansive postures, think of like arms stretched out like you just won a game, or hands on your hips like Superwoman, you have an increase in testosterone and a decrease in cortisol is what she found in one of her studies. The longer they held these poses, arms back, legs up, that they had this change in their salivary cortisol. And the thing is, sometimes when you're stressed, you want to do that, big power pose. But the same is true of the poses with a protective stance. So look at this girl here, right? I don't know if you can kind of tell, but she's secretly strong. She's like a, coiled little snake there. She's got some strength inside of her, but you wouldn't know it because she's just sitting there all demure, but do not mistake. She just packs a punch, right? And she's just happy being in her body in the way it is. You don't have to stand there and be all powerful and posing. You can be nice and defensive. You can be very self-soothing. And you can still have beneficial effects on your mental state. And when stress gets intense, sometimes going inwards toward that self-protection mode and a place of safety can help you. A lot of stress is due to that sense of fear and that sense of being in danger. So doing this technique with that confidence, not in like okay, I'm trying this, like with a scared hand, like the more that you really grip your arm, and that's what I was saying, really grip your arm, you are kind of giving yourself that biofeedback of like, no, I'm giving myself a nice, strong pat on the shoulder here, and your body will respond to that touch. And it can help you block out any overstimulation that might be stressing you out and help that nervous system reset. This practice can also give you the ability to think more intentionally because you're developing that presence and that ability to be in the here and now and see things as they truly are. I highly recommend checking out Brooke Castillo and her podcast on the Life Coach School. Also, getting a life coach is not a bad idea if you're willing to put in the time and effort, because it is a very intense thing if you're going to look into getting a life coach. It is no joke. But with the Life Coach School and the Life Coach podcast, they have a model for self-coaching, which you can do. And that is a model that increases self-awareness. The model states that circumstances happen. That's a fact, which leads to a thought. This leads to a feeling, which then leads to action and results. By having a script in your head, in the here, in the now, you're practicing developing a script in your head, right? And so what you can do when you're working with this model is you can also be aware of the present moment and have more clarity in the entire model. So thinking about in the here, in the now, sets you up for not only stress relief in the short term, but practicing for self-coaching in this model. So once you start doing more in the here and the now, you'll be able to run through this model and better see and clarify what's going on just with your life in general and apply it to many, many different aspects of it. So in the emergency room, how do we apply this technique? The idea is that using both the breathing techniques and a mental script in the ER, it looks a little different because I'm kind of guiding somebody through it. And I don't often tell people, okay, now practice this, say in the here and the now. But I do it in a slightly different way where I'm using a mental script of maintaining presence while also with a sense of touch wherever possible. So the basics are the same. For example, I had a young patient who needed sutures and was pretty anxious about it. A lot of people are very anxious when they need sutures, and that's entirely understandable. And when I notice someone is pretty anxious, what I'll do when I start to do the exam is I'll actually start with a lung exam. Maybe they don't even need a lung exam. Maybe, they have they just bumped their toe. But if they're very anxious, what I'll often do is start by listening to the lungs so that I can have them do those big, deep breaths in and those big, deep breaths out. So for this patient, when I went to go, she calmed down with the breathing technique. And then as I went to go look at the cut that I needed to fix and inject the medication, she got really scared and started yelling, oh my gosh, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. And her voice kind of goes, I can't do this, I can't do this. You can hear that tonality really rise. And that's a big marker of stress, is that tonality really starts to increase. The voice kind of goes higher and higher. So she was developing this script that was making her feel a whole lot worse. Thankfully, her dad was there to help hold her hand, and he was able to provide that reassuring touch because my hands were kind of busy. Sometimes when I'm working with people and they're taking those deep breaths, I'll sometimes put a hand on their shoulder just because I have to help them sit forward a bit. So I'll use one hand to kind of hold them forward, and that is also very soothing from what I have seen. So as she's yelling, I can't do this, I can't do this, I just kind of just offer the quick suggestion. And this is, to change that mental script and then offer it in a nice calm tone so that she can remember maybe she needs to breathe. I said, how about we try, I can do this. And she kind of paused for a minute, and her dad is holding her hand. I'm kind of like exaggerating slower, deeper breaths, making eye contact with her, really getting into that polyvagal social engagement techniques. As I'm injecting the medication, which is a little bit painful, and I do warn people about that, she kept saying, I can't do this, I can't do this. And I just kept repeating, I can do this, I can do this. And then she'd say, I can't do this, I can't do this. I can do this, I can do this. And the next thing you know, she started repeating me, I can do this, I can do this. And then her voice started, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. By the end of it, it's actually over pretty quick, but I got her to be able to say, I can do this, I can do this. She started smiling. Even though she was still undergoing a bit of a painful procedure, she started smiling, and that script really, really changed the game for her. So what this does is just to remember that maintaining that presence, the breathing, and changing that script, along with that hand holding, is that changing that script while maintaining that secure, safe feeling and paying attention to your breath can absolutely do wonders for your stress level and change your relationship to those circumstances that you're facing. And then in turn, once you get a little bit more advanced in this, you can look into that life coaching model starting with your circumstance. Okay, so what did we cover in this lesson? We focused on that the technique is a focusing technique to bring back that sense of safety. We went through a 1-minute practice to layer in that sensory, more open hand, more felt touch experience with the breathing and the mind phrases to change your mindset. Why does this work? It's because it puts that locus of control back within you. You have that confident defensive stance so that you're able to help get rid of that overwhelm, and you're using that veniception technique, and you're also developing your relaxation and your self-regulation skills. You can use this out and about by deep breathing and healing touch really at any time. A lot of people do this, and it's really not that odd to see. And you can help somebody else with it by helping change their script. You can help them by breathing and just by a simple, healing touch or familiar touch on that shoulder. Okay, happiness bonus for this lesson is to write down 3 good things. All you have to do is 3 good things that happened that day. Ideally, obviously, do this at the end of the day, but if you can find 3 that happened early on in the day, great. All you have to do is do this every day for a week, and it has been proven to show a benefit to your levels of happiness. Download the course materials at stressreleasesurvivalguide.com.